All right, let's jump right in. Have you ever felt like your faith, which maybe started with a ton of excitement, has kind of hit a wall? Well, today we're going to dig into a really fascinating take from the 19th century writer Andrew Murray. He saw this exact problem and found what he called a powerful and honestly a pretty surprising cure right inside the book of Hebrews. So first, let's really set the scene here. Murray wasn't just talking about some old, dusty problem from his time. Nope, he was getting at a spiritual condition that feels, incredibly real for a lot of people even today. I mean, seriously, have you ever felt like you're just going through the motions? You still believe in everything, but you just don't feel like you're actually getting anywhere. If that sounds familiar, you are so not alone. That feeling of being spiritually stuck is the exact thing we're going to unpack. And what's wild is that these words were written more than 100 years ago. Murray noticed that the number one complaint from believers wasn't some big crisis of faith, but more like a loss of momentum. A lack of that real, wholehearted drive and forward progress. He called it a spiritual standstill. It's kind of like learning a few basic chords on a guitar, but then never actually learning how to play a full song. People get the basics of their face down, the elementary stuff, and then they just stop growing. So what's the deal? What causes this? If you've ever felt this way, you probably think, ugh, I just need to try harder, be more disciplined. But Marie's diagnosis is something else entirely. And this is the big twist. Murray argues that the root cause isn't about how much effort you're putting in, it's about a failure to see something. The key isn't to just try harder, it's to grasp a specific, powerful truth that you might be missing. This really lays out the two states he saw. On one side, you've got what he calls the rudiments. This is where believers are kind of like babes in Christ, just stuck on the basics. But on the other side, you have perfection, and he's quick to say this doesn't mean being sinless. It means maturity, a faith that's actually moving forward into real joy and strength. And the stakes here are pretty high. According to Murray, staying in that first stage doesn't just make for a weak or unsatisfying faith. It actually creates a real danger of your heart getting hard and just slowly drifting away. Okay, so after diagnosing the problem so clearly, Murray found the prescription for this spiritual rut, and he says it's all packed into the message of the book of Hebrews. So here's the cure in a nutshell. To get from that standstill to a strong, growing faith, you need a deeper knowledge of Jesus. Not just Jesus who died and rose again way back when, but Jesus is a living, active high priest in heaven right now. And what does that even mean, right? Well, this idea of the heavenly priesthood is that Jesus' work for us didn't end on the cross. He is still working for us in heaven, securing our access to God, and making the power of heaven available to us in our everyday lives. So it's not about waiting to get to heaven someday. It's about tapping into heaven's power today. Murray breaks this down into three huge ideas from Hebrews. First, the heavenly sanctuary, God's actual presence, is now wide open to us. Second, the way in is the same path Jesus took, self-sacrifice. And third, and this is the game changer, Jesus himself, as our priest in heaven, is actively giving us the power to live this way. So how does the book of Hebrews prove this? It's actually pretty brilliant. It builds this case step by step, using a series of really powerful comparisons that show just how much better this new reality is. Yeah, to really drive this home, the writer of Hebrews doesn't just state the facts. They build an airtight case. They show piece by piece how Jesus is better than every single person and system that came before him, proving beyond a doubt that this heavenly cure is the real deal. First, the book makes the case that Jesus, as the Son of God, is infinitely greater than the angels who delivered the old law. Then it shows how Jesus is greater than even Moses, the incredibly faithful servant who led God's people and brought them the Old Covenant. And the conclusion from all these greater-than comparisons is just undeniable. Because Jesus is superior in every single way, the new covenant he brings is radically better. It offers a more direct, a more powerful, and a more lasting life of faith. So, what's the point of all this for you and me? Well, this isn't just some interesting theology. Murray presents it as a direct, personal invitation for every single one of us. So the ultimate takeaway is this. If your faith feels stuck, the answer isn't to just grit your teeth and try harder. The invitation is to press on, to move beyond the basics and into a much deeper understanding of who Jesus is and what he is actively doing for you right now from heaven. Murray summed it up perfectly himself. He said, the one cure for all our spiritual weakness is to just look to Jesus on the throne of heaven. It's all about knowing him better. And that brings us to the final thought, which is really the question the book of Hebrews poses to all of us. It's one thing to believe in Jesus, but it's another to truly consider him, to think about his current work, his power, and his role as our priest. What do you think might change if we really did that?